All right, now we're talking about color grading. This is my full color grading process. I'm going to show you two different ways to color grade your images. I'm going to show you using the presets that I've developed, as well as how to do this and create your own presets. So the first thing you want to do is load the color grading presets into Davinci Resolve. So go ahead and open up to the folder where you downloaded the color grading presets. And what we're going to do is come into Davinci Resolve and click on File, Project Settings, and now you're going to go ahead and click on Color Management. Under Color Management, if you scroll down, you've got this Open LUT Folder button. Go ahead and click on that, and now you've got both of your Finder windows open. Now you're just going to go ahead and drag my preset folder into this folder right here. These are all the LUT files, all the color grading presets that Davinci Resolve has access to. I've already imported mine into Davinci Resolve, so I'm just going to go ahead and close out of this. But once you've brought them into here, just go ahead and close out of this. Just go ahead and press cancel. And then under here, you've got your LUTs tab. You're going to go ahead and right click anywhere and just click on refresh. And then under here, you'll click on the Film Color LUT Pack by Studio McKay. Now these are all the color grading presets that will be included in this LUT pack, and we can go ahead and scroll through here to see how each of these presets are going to affect our image. So we're going to go ahead and click on our first image, create a new node, and we're just going to go ahead and label this one LUT. Now this first one is a technical LUT. This is where you can add contrast if you shot in cine style. And then we also have some of these more creative ones where we can add different film looks to the footage. So we'll just go ahead and scroll through here, see which ones we like best. So the one I'm liking the best is Film Color 915. I'm going to go ahead and double click that to add it to the node that we have selected. And we can see that we've added a color grading preset. If we turn it off and back on, we can see that my preset has increased some of the saturation. The blues, it's created more color separation between our skin tones and our more cool blue tones, and it looks pretty good. There's not a lot we need to do with the image from here on out. We're going to go ahead and apply these LUTs on some other images, and I'll also show you toward the end how I color grade from scratch without these presets. So coming to the next image, we're going to go ahead and create a new node. We're just going to go ahead and label this LUT. And then we'll scroll through here and see which ones we like the best. Now, if these look too strong, you can dial these back a little bit here, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. I'm liking this 927. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then to dial back the intensity of this LUT, you can come here to your key controls, and under our key controls right here, we can change our key output, which basically just controls the overall opacity of this node. So if we dial it back, we can see the effect that we're having, and just gently introduce this LUT, just tasteful amounts of it, and we can go ahead and disable this node and turn it back on to see the effect that we're having. Now we'll go ahead and apply a couple more presets here. Now on this next clip, I'm going to go ahead and create a new node, label it LUT, and scroll through my presets here. I'm liking this Film Color 109. This kind of just brings out some of those blues in the backpack and creates a more realistic rendition of the colors on set. And we can also see that we're getting much cooler, much more rich green tones in the image, and it doesn't mess with our skin tones that much. So I'm liking how this LUT looks. Coming to our next image, we'll just go ahead and scroll over to our hero shot, something just like that, and we'll go ahead and create a new node, and we'll scroll through our LUTs to see which one we want to use on this image. I'm going to go ahead and use Film Color 629. This is very strong, so again, we're just going to come under our key controls and bring down our key output, and then just gently introduce it as it looks good. Something like that is looking good. And then I'm noticing though that some of these colors are just overall, they're kind of blending a little bit too much into the image. It's all starting to look a little bit yellow. So I'm going to drag this out, and I'm going to press Shift S on my keyboard to create a node before this one. Under here, we're just going to go ahead and reduce our temperature, just bring it to the left a little bit to introduce some of those blue tones and increase our green as well. Now we're just going to go ahead and label this one Grade Fix. And then we'll just go ahead and select both of these nodes here, and then we'll press Command D on our keyboard to disable these two nodes. We can see the before just after the color correction, and then once we apply our final grade. Very subtle, but I think it brings out some of the color in the image pretty well. Now coming to this next clip, let's scroll to our hero shot. Something right about there looks pretty good. Now I think I want to color grade this one from scratch. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is create a couple more nodes here just to give me some room. Come back to our second node, and I'm thinking just for the color grade, I do want to add a little bit more contrast using our curves. So I'll bring down my shadows just a little bit. I'm liking how that looks. And then I'm going to also come over to our sat versus sat curves. And I'm going to go ahead and increase the saturation in some of these less saturated areas. And I also want to saturate my highlights a little bit using my luma versus saturation curve. Something like that. And my yellows are a little too saturated, so I'll come to my hue versus sat, bring down some of those yellows, bring up all of the other colors. And I want to bring out some of this blue in the sky and some of these cooler colors in the trees. So I'm going to go ahead and just jack up the saturation in my blues a little bit here. Something like that's looking pretty good. Now I do want these blues to look a little bit more teal, so I'm going to come to my hue versus hue and then just gently massage these colors where I want to be. Bring my skin tones back so they look about right. Make my yellows just a little bit more orange. Something like that's looking pretty good. And we've done all that just using our curves. So I'm going to go ahead and label this one curves. And then in our next node, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at our log wheels. I don't want to use my primaries wheels since these can affect the color in the overall image. I just want to be targeting certain ranges. So I'll come to my log wheels and I'm going to go ahead and take some blue out of our highlights. So I'm just going to come to my blue here and pull that down just a little bit. I'm going to come to my midtones, and again I'm going to warm up those midtones by pulling out a little bit of blue, and I'll also pull out just a tiny bit of green as well. And then in my shadows I want to cool these off a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and take out some red to add a little bit more teal in those shadows. Now I am noticing that this image is shifting a little bit towards green, so I do want to fix that a little bit here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce a little bit more magenta into the image. Might warm it up a little bit as well. And then just to top this off, I think I will use a preset on this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and label this log wheels. And then on this last one, I'll just top it off with one of these presets. Now this one is quite strong, so I'm going to come back here and bring down my key output all the way and just gently introduce some of this preset right here just till it looks about good. And then we can go ahead and see our before without any adjustments and our after. And if we just want to look at our color grade, we can select all three of these nodes and press Command D. This is just after our color correction, and then Command D again to re-enable them. And this is our final color grade. Coming to our next clip here, I'm noticing that there is quite a bit of kind of a purple cast to our blue tones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to our hero frame right about here, and I'm going to go ahead and create another node. And I already know what tools I'm going to use to create a nice color grade on this, so I'm just going to label this curves, and I'll come back to my color curves. Now under my hue versus hue, I do want to change the color of the sky here, so I'm just going to go ahead and click on the sky, and it creates a couple points automatically down here. And I'm just going to up these colors a little bit towards that more cyan region, and that's looking pretty good. I'll widen this selection area just to make a more gentle adjustment, and I'll bring it up a little bit more here. Something like that looks pretty good. We'll disable this and bring it back. Okay, now we are seeing a little bit of reds here, So I'm going to go ahead and bring these red colors down towards yellow a little bit, not too much, just a little. And I'll bring these reds back up a little bit here. Looking pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and saturate some of these shadows. So I'm going to come to my loom versus sat, and I'm going to saturate those shadows a little bit, and then just bring our midtones right back down. Something like that looks pretty good. Now we can add a little bit of a teal tint to these shadows if we want to create that blockbuster film look. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new node, and then under my log wheels, I'll just bring out some of this red, pull that back a little bit here. I think I'll cool off those midtones as well. And then just warm up those highlights. And then we'll just label this log. And then we'll go ahead and disable these two nodes. And this is just after we've done our color correction. And then this is our color grade. Very subtle differences, but you can see that we're adding a little bit of a stylistic look to the image. And if we want, we can go ahead and top this off with a preset. So I'm going to go ahead and come to my presets, see which one I like the best on this one. I think it's Film Color 629. And I'm just going to go ahead and dial back the intensity a little bit here. Something right about there looks pretty good. I'll just go ahead and label this node LUT. And we'll move on to our last three clips here. Now in this clip, we're gonna go ahead and come back to our curves. We're gonna create a new node. And what I wanna do is I want to just cool off everything except for the skin tones. We can use our qualifiers to do this. Now, disclaimer, your qualifiers are very powerful tools, but if used improperly, they can totally ruin your images. So for this, we're just gonna go ahead and select some of these skin tones here. I'll just drag to select and then press Shift H on my keyboard to see what I've selected. Now you can see how this is a very splotchy kind of a mask. We've got a lot of pixelation going on here, and it's not really masking out these colors super well. This is one of the issues with using qualifiers on 8-bit footage. You can use them. You just have to be careful so that you don't get a ton of weird artifacting and pixelation going on in your image. You can see it's kind of dancing around right here on this table as I play through the frame, and we don't want that. So I'm going to come to my hue, and I'm going to increase the width just a little bit to select more color. I'm just going to go ahead and disable the saturation one. I don't need to select anything based on the saturation. And I'm going to go ahead and disable my luminance. No, I think I'll bring that back. And I'm just going to go ahead and soften this out. I'll increase the low soft to increase the feather in the lower range, increase the high soft to increase the feather in the high range. And I'll just adjust my low and my high. Just something like that looks pretty good. And then to clean this up just a little bit more, because we can see we still have some pixelation going on here, I'm just going to go ahead and increase the blur radius. This is just going to blur out our mask a little bit and make it a little less obvious that we used a qualifier. Now, if we press this little invert button right here, we're inverting our selection and we're selecting everything but our skin tones. And we can see that we have a little bit of work to do here. I'm going to go ahead and increase this width a little bit here. And I'm now going to press Shift H on my keyboard, and we've selected our skin tone, then we inverted it so we're selecting everything else. Because what I want to do here is I want to cool off all the other colors outside of the skin tone. Now I'm going to go ahead and come to my primaries wheels, and I'm going to just bring out some of the red from our image. I'll just bring that down, subtract a little bit of red, and we're adding some teal into all the other colors in the image. I'll also take out a little bit of the green as well, just a tiny bit to make this less obvious that it's a teal color. And there we go, looking a lot better, a lot more natural and neutral. So I'm going to go ahead and label this qualifier and then wheels. And then we'll create another node after this. And I'm just going to go ahead and increase some of the saturation of the overall image. Something like that's looking pretty good. All right, so now I'm just going to go ahead and scrub through my image to make sure everything looks good. Now I'm going to create a new node here, and I'm going to come to my hue versus sat curves, and I'm just going to go ahead and desaturate this shirt a little bit, but saturate all the other colors just a little bit here. A little bit is all it takes. And then I also want to adjust the hue of that shirt just a little bit too. Something like that looks pretty good. And I will bring my skin tones right back to where I want them, somewhere around there. And we'll just label this one HSL curves. All right, if we just go ahead and disable our grade here, we can see our color correction, and then we can see what we did in the color grade. This is a preset that you can go ahead and save and use in other color grading projects as well. If you want to turn this into your own color grading preset, you could just right click on your file down here, click on Generate LUT 33 point cube, and then from here you could just save it wherever you want, call it whatever you want, and you're good to go. All right, moving on to our last two shots here, we're going to create a new node, and for these I'm just going to go ahead and scrub through my presets here real quick to see if there are any that I like. And this film color 927, it is a little bit strong, but I do like what I'm seeing from it. So I'm going to come to my key output and just drag that back down a little bit, and then increase it slowly here. Right around 500 looks good. And I'll just label this node LUT. And then same thing on this one, create a new node and then just scrub through these presets. I am liking this film color 629, that looks pretty cool. So I'm just gonna bring down our key output a little bit here. And I think I wanna saturate the image a little bit. Something like that looks pretty good. And then I'll just label this one LUT. All right, so just a final recap. If we look at our first image here, we started by color correcting on these first two nodes. We started with our exposure, then we went to our contrast and our white balance, and then we color graded using a color grading preset called a lookup table or a LUT. And then we also did a couple of examples here where we did it all manually, where we started with our color corrections and then we started color grading our image with a unique look without having to use any of these color grading presets. A couple of things that I do want to show you before we wrap up this course is power windows. We just kind of brushed over them a little bit, but I do want to go into them just a little bit more on this clip. I think I'm going to use this clip right here. So I'm going to go ahead and create another node here, and then what I want to do is, like, if I just wanted to brighten up his face, what I could do is I could come to my power windows, I could create a window, drag it over his face, size it to the right position, and then I could increase the feather here and just drag it to where I want it to be. And then let's say I want to either brighten his face or darken the rest of the frame. I like the brightness of his face here, so I'm just going to go ahead and darken the rest of the frame, coming to my curves. Now I'll pull this down. Now you may be saying, whoa, 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 Carson, it's darkening his face. Don't worry, we're going to fix that. We'll come back to our power window, and then we can use these controls here to invert our window. Now when we click this right here, we've inverted our power window, so we've darkened everything else outside his face. But you'll notice as we go through the shot, because this was a moving shot, it's starting to slide off his face a little bit. So what we can do is we'll come back to our first frame here, and then we'll press Command T on the keyboard on a Mac or Control T on Windows. So Command T, and it'll track this mask all the way through the shot. You can do this if you need to brighten or darken faces, or really just track any adjustments to a specific area within your image. You can also use power windows to just adjust the color within a specific area within the image, just like we did here. So I'm liking what we've done. And then if we wanted to do a similar adjustment on our next clip, we could go ahead and create a new node. We'll just go ahead and brighten things up a little bit here, something like that. And then if we just want to localize this adjustment to just his face, we'll come back to our mask here, or our power windows, and then we'll only adjust the brightness of this range within our image or his face. And then we can of course track it, do other things like that. So there you have it, my simplified color correction and color grading workflow for content creators.